ODAN, I do love you. Please remember that. I will never forget you.
Set a course for love.
Ah, yes. One of your earth emotions.
Glad I found you.
Let's get married.
Delete the wife.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Deep Space Love, the Star Trek podcast where a married Trekkie couple explore love in all its forms across the final frontier. I'm Nicole, one of your hosts.
I'm one of your other hosts, Joe.
Joe, you're the only other host.
What's up?
Not much. It's summertime, so easy living, right?
Yeah, easy. Yeah, we'll say that. Things are good. We had a nice trip up north in Minnesota. We call it up north. Lake culture. Had a good time with that.
We were literally almost in Canada.
We were almost in Canada.
We basically paddled into Canadian waters.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was nice to be in Canada
north.
for a little bit.
It really was nice to be in Canada for a little bit.
But yeah, other than that, we're doing good. I am excited though because we have a special guest today.
You are right. Let's bring him in. Today with us we have Rob Kassees, who is a member of the Star Trek The Next Generation tribute band, the Beverly Crushers. Their most recent album, Enterprise, dropped earlier this year in January. Welcome to the podcast,
Welcome.
Rob.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
How's it going?
It's going great. Beautiful. I was just thinking that in other parts of the country, Minnesota all sounds like Canada to us.
kind of. Yeah, we're kind of like Canada light sometimes.
I think Joe has sent you our guest questions that we ask everybody new to the pod.
Did my due diligence.
You did do your due diligence. Are you ready, Rob?
I am. Yeah, I'm ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, the first one is either really easy or really hard, I think, depending on who you are. But why do you love Trek?
It's only hard because there are so many reasons. But
Exactly.
I grew up with it, of course, so there's a nostalgic aspect. But as an adult, I think it is this grand vision for what the future can be. And there are just so many interesting ideas about so many things, sci-fi ideas, etc. But really, I'm referring to the societal vision that they're putting forward. This post-capitalist, post-racial, exploratory, the Earth is all together. I mean, even people across planets are together. It's a nice liberal vision of what could be.
Could be. The next couple questions I kind of explain in like different ways, so they kind of be up to interpretation. I don't know how Joe writes them, actually. I just know how I have them written. So,
Sure.
Home base crew, or like which crew would you want to work with, or maybe like what's your comfort food show? I mean, if you want to answer all of those or just one of those, it's up to you. But just sort of giving us a little bit of background on like kind of like where you mostly sit in the Trek universe.
Yeah, of course. Well, everything for me centers around The Next Generation. I watched it in its original run when it was on primetime with my parents, and they were into it and might have even called themselves Trekkies at the time. And so when I was 13, I went to my first Star Trek convention, and certainly the character development on a show like that is just so great. I mean, it's one of the reasons we started the band. We have a lot of fun with expanding on the world building around the characters. What is it really like to work on the Enterprise? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a model of leadership, which is something I'm also passionate about, Picard he's my guy. He's the philosopher king. He's the dude I want in charge.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well said.
I would have guessed, but never want to make assumptions. Last question is getting down to not just show, but character out of the franchise. If you could go on a date with the character and, your interpretation of a date, if you want it to be romantic, that's cool. If you'd rather it just be a very casual, like kind of just friend meetup over coffee or a beer, whatever. But what character would you want to like kind of take out for any reason, I guess?
This is a tough one because there's so many different directions this could go. I'm not thinking romance. I'm happily married for many years now. So I kind of want to have fun and pick someone's brain And so if we're going for drinks, I got to go with a guy like O'Brien. He just seems like a fun-loving dude.
Yes.
We can talk about being married and being family men, and we have something in common in that sense. Like that, if I really want to tap into my revolutionary side, I'd pick Ensign Rowe. I feel like she has some good tips for how to fight fascism that I might need.
That is a good answer too. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I don't think anyone said Ensign Rowe before. I love
like
that a lot.
I like that. Yeah.
I have a quick question about O'Brien though. Would drinks be at Quarks or would it be in 10 Forward?
It's got to be 10 Forward. Quarks is creepy, man.
I just feel like we see
it's
O'Brien.
Not cozy.
I just feel like we see O'Brien at the Quarks a lot more. But
I like him before he had those years of torturous prison labor.
Oh my God,
yeah. A lifetime.
Well, thank you for indulging us in those questions. It's always a really good, fun way to get to like kind of know our guests a little bit and have a jumping off point. So, and it's always fun to hear all the different answers. So thank you.
Of course.
So about the band, the Beverly Crushers, could you just give us like a just really brief like origin story? Like how did you like come to blend like your Trekkie fandom with music?
Yeah, I've been a lifelong musician. If I'm a nerd about anything, or if I had to rank my nerddoms, music is at the top of that list. Been doing it since I was a kid and writing and performing in bands all those years. And I have a really close friend who I've known since I was a teenager, who I've been collaborating with and who I continue to collaborate with on this project. His name's Tom. And it was really born out of some jam sessions. We were playing with a drummer. We were having fun, but it was pretty loose. I was getting ready to move away, to be pretty far away. And we said, you know what? It'd be cool just to commemorate this time in our lives, just to write some songs, take it into the studio, have fun. And we came up with this writing prompt. We both love The Next Generation. We've made inside jokes and references to it over the years amongst our friend group. And we just said, let's just write about that. That'd be a fun little prompt. We quickly pulled together 3 or 4 songs. We went in, we did this weekend recording session with a band, and it just turned out so great that even though we were geographically dispersed for a few years, we continued it as a recording project. We had so much fun with it as a writing prompt, exploring the stories and implanting all those little Easter eggs from the show. And of course, the main bit of research for the show is just watching the show again, which is always enjoyable.
Yes.
That is great. I love that. Could you, so we have you here, but could you just give like maybe our listeners like a breakdown of like who else is in the band?
Sure. So my name's Rob. I sing about half of the songs and I play guitar for the most part. And then my writing partner, Tom, he writes and sings on about the other half of the songs and he plays bass. Then we recruited, as soon as we knew we were going to do a Star Trek themed band, we recruited a friend we knew from the area who we'd played with a little bit, who we knew was a diehard Star Trek fan. His name is Scott. He plays trombone, trumpet, and keyboards and piano. And the drummer we play with is a guy called Joe. So it's based out of the Bay Area, but the interesting thing about the band is we actually have not played in the same room that many times because for a lot of our history, we've been living in different parts of the world. I was living in Asia for a few years, but even when that was happening, we would still write songs, exchange demos over email, and then we would plan to get together for long weekends in the studio, and we would record these songs together and produce them and release them.
Interesting. Oh, cool.
That's actually like way cooler.
Seems challenging.
Somehow. Yeah, like the unique challenge across time and space. I love it.
Indeed. And, it led to this world of where a lot of it has been more home recording focused and a little less about gigging. When I was a younger man, I was gigging a lot in rock bands and things like that. And that was a lot of fun. But at this point, you get a little later on in life, your priorities shift. I have a career, I have a family. Everyone else in the band is in a similar situation. And we have just started playing live shows to support the new record, but it's intended to be an occasional thing where we just throw a party for friends and have a great time.
Nice. So we've been listening to the newest album quite a bit, Enterprise. I was kind of trying to like pin down like the sound like genre. Like I feel like there's definitely like kind of like a rock alternative, a little bit of funk in there. But
Sure.
I love the significant like horn section, like you mentioned, like the trombone, the trumpet. Like it's really fun. Like how would you describe like your sound to somebody who hasn't listened, or perhaps like what's your musical influence?
I would say in general, it's a love letter to the 1970s, which
Yeah.
is
Ooh.
everyone in the band's musical home base. But we have then purposely explored some different genres within that. Like you said, there's some funkiness. Obviously, we have a horn player. I didn't even mention that Scott, our trombone player, he began playing trombone because Riker plays trombone
Love that.
on Next Gen. So he was watching him as a 13-year-old and was like, that's my instrument now.
Oh.
And yeah, so there's elements of that. There's just elements of other bits of classic rock that we all love. I really love Pink Floyd, of course, the Beatles before them, but
Yeah,
also
I
stuff
heard
that's
that.
a little bit harder edged, like Thin Lizzy. And so, yes, the answer is the 70s generally, all the way through to the singer-songwriter stuff. And then I think if you listen through to Enterprise, you'll get some 90s as well, because we were in high school in the 90s when Weezer and bands like that were big, which
Yeah.
I've always thought of as a throwback to the 70s, so not too dissimilar.
I could see that. Yeah. So in listening to Enterprise, like I feel like the lyrics, the writing is really fun and clever. Like the first song, Warp Speed, it's plain to see we're built for warp speed. Warp Speed's a fun line. Really loved Space and Time, that vibe. And we were just talking, we were kind of just geeking out about the Guinan song, The
It's
Listener.
so catchy.
It's so catchy.
Nice.
But one of the questions that I had was like, is there like a Trek phrase or concept or like idea that you were like, I really want to like make a song around this idea, and you're really proud with how it turned out?
Great question. Yes is the definite answer. I think we went through a few more of those on the first album, Sick
Okay.
Bay. Like when I wrote When the Walls Fell, which is on that earlier album, I set out to use that phrase, A, and B, to write the entire song in Temerian language, which is from the episode Darmok, where Picard is trying to converse with Paul Winfield, who's playing an alien who only speaks in metaphor. So, and I think similarly, when we first started the band, the first thing that popped in my head from the writing prompt angle was an idea for a song that I had been carrying around in my head forever, but just had never sat down and wrote, which was Make It So. I always wanted to write a song called Make It So that was a love letter from Wesley to Picard, who he really wants to be his dad. And so that was one of the first songs we wrote. So I think we kind of went through those cycles maybe a little earlier, and then you realize you somewhat run out of those phrases. And then it becomes more about, on this last round, it's a little more about exploring like, hey, what's an emotion that is a little underexplored? What is an angle on this character that feels true, that I can relate to in a human way, but that maybe wasn't overly explored on the show? Like I wrote about Q messing around with humans in space and time just because he's bored. Obviously that has been explored on the show. Or the Guinan song you mentioned, The Listener, which is really a tribute to JC Superstar, which is a great aspect of the musical 70s, in my opinion. But, it's about her constantly giving out advice and being mobbed by people. So, yeah, that's usually the genesis of it. We think like, oh, what's like an area of the show that we could explore emotionally that makes sense? Or Geordi being in love with the ship and the ship being a proxy for his romantic interest. And that's what the song Warp Speed is about.
Yep.
Oh, just a pretty face though too, about with Troy, yeah.
Right. Or Troy being relegated or feeling like she's not given the same role as the men on the ship and feeling like that's unfair. That just felt true to me. And so when I started writing that song, that's what I set out to do. I was like, how do I make that into a song, that idea?
Yeah. I see the evolution. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We didn't ask this yet. I guess I have to ask, like, what the decision to call yourselves the Beverly Crushers, origin of the name. Sorry.
Many reasons. Don't think we thought about it too hard. Just popped out and we knew it was right. One, we like the character of Beverly Crusher. I know we're going to talk about the host tonight. I certainly had a crush on her when I was a teenager. Second, I think we both, Tom and I, like the male-female gender reversal aspect of the name. And the third was it had this element of hardness in the word crusher. It sounded like a rock band to us.
Cool. I love that. So the I was gonna ask, do you have any plans to like write songs in the future, like outside of that like TNG sandbox? Like, are we gonna get like a Tuvix song someday down the road or something like that?
Definitely open to a Deep Space Nine side project or an
Okay, yeah.
Enterprise or a Voyager side project. Yeah, we've kept ourselves pretty busy with
Hmm.
next gen, and I should also mention that Tom and I have a couple other bands going, and we
I'm
do other
sure.
concept albums, and nothing has really had the legs or the repeatability that the Beverly Crushers have had, but we do write other songs and do other things with it as well. So I'm staying open to it. I love music, like I said. To me, it's just really fun to try something new, maybe to explore a genre, explore an emotion, and that feeling of finishing a song and getting it produced to where you can listen back to it. It sounds good and it sounds like the vision was realized. That is just the most exciting moment in my life, frankly.
Amazing. Yeah. Last thing for you about the band, I wanted to ask. You mentioned you're kind of doing some gigs now that you got the new album out. Are you coming to Minnesota?
It's not in the cards just yet. I'm open to being contacted by someone who works with the convention circuit. I've been trying to make some of those connections. And of course, I'd be open to doing that. But like I said, we are part-time musicians,
Yeah.
part-time creatives, and the idea of jumping in a van and driving across the country and sleeping on the floor is something that is a little behind us in our lives.
It's a whole
But
nother
that said,
level.
of course, yeah. But that said, I think we all feel like we love being on stage, playing the songs, very exciting stuff. So at this point, we're just getting that live show piece going. We literally just played our first ever live
Ooh.
show a couple months ago. We have our second one scheduled in San Francisco in a couple months, and it's a process. You meet people doing that. You learn about how to stage a show, and who knows what comes of that. I'm definitely open.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever up here, we'll be there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for answering these questions. The next segment we have in our show is a segment I call Trek Check, in which it just like we go through a couple news items in the Star Trek world that are just kind of interesting and new. Rob, you're welcome to just like listen along. I'll talk to the audience, but if you want to like jump in with your thoughts, absolutely welcome to as well. The Some big news that I think that was affected me a little bit was the news of Star Trek writer Peter David passed away in May. He wrote the New Frontier novels, and he's written a lot of comics. But I read those New Frontier books like when I was a kid, and I had like a toy of Captain Calhoun from those. Like, it was super nerdy. But like, that was kind of a bummer to hear that he passed away. So just wanted to give him an RIP shout out to Peter David there. Um, we also got news, and since we haven't been on air for a while, that Strange New Worlds is coming to an end with season 5. Kind of an abbreviated season 5, like I think 6 episodes or something like that, but I think they're going to be longer.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's going to be shorter. But I mean, everyone's like, oh, it's canceled. It's like, well, they just announced there's going to be 3 more seasons, but ending there. So that's, I mean, it seems like they're all getting, the newer shows are getting about 5. So that was big. I also just kind of found some interesting stuff about some like Star Trek related documentaries. Bruce Horrick, who played Hemmer in Strange New Worlds, is working on a documentary about his journey as like the first blind actor to portray a blind character in Star Trek, and then like looking for people who have this like who similarly have used their disability in some artistic way in across America, and just kind of like touring and meeting those people. So he was doing a crowdfunding for that, and it didn't get the goal, but I think he's still trying to continue that work. So that was kind of an interesting one. I'm following that. And I'm also following the Beam Me Up Sulu documentary, which just premiered at Radiance Film Festival. And that's about George Takei and his involvement in a weird little fan film in 1985. Super obscure little fan film that like was lost and then recently recovered by the guy who made it and someone who just was interested, and they like finished it. And so they made a documentary. They finished the movie. I think you could watch, you see the film in the documentary, and then there's like they talk about it, and George Takei is in the documentary as well. And it's just about his impact, like his representation had on like the people who made the fan film. So it looks really cool and like silly and geeky, but like kind of touching in a way too. So I'm intrigued and watching for that. The other interesting little news piece is the comic series, the IDW comic series Star Trek. There's one that's following Cisco and one that's following Worf. They are coming to an end, but there's a new comic series that's announced called Star Trek: The Last Starship, from Eisner nominated duo of Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. And this is like going to take place like during that burn of Star Trek Discovery. So before Discovery made that jump, but like during that burn time. And apparently it's supposedly like a ship with a whole new crew, but apparently like Captain Kirk is there for some reason resurrected, which is absurd and feels like something that I would really dislike if it was like, this is the new show. But like if it's comic world, I'm like, okay, it's wonky comic stuff. I could kind of get behind that. Yeah. So that seems kind of interesting. And the last tiny bit of news is we just heard Star Trek's having a presence at San Diego Comic-Con coming up about Strange New Worlds and also Starfleet Academy. So hopefully we'll get a trailer there.
Do you think, I have a question for you. Do you think Star Trek is in a renaissance right now?
That's a really interesting question that I think we've talked about not on air a lot. I think that it was for a little bit in like, right, like when they had like the 5 shows going at once, I think like they were really strong, but I almost feel like they might have overextended themselves because they like kept canceling them, and like the kind of the juggling of Star Trek Prodigy to different networks was kind of goofy. And I feel like with Paramount being kind of in that weird merger and getting in trouble like with the government, like I don't even know what's going on there, but like I feel like Star Trek has been a little bit put on the back burner. I do think it's still going pretty strong. Like Strange New Worlds is very successful, and the fact that they have I think 2 shows in production that seem to have some pretty big stars attached to it. Like I'm hoping, it feels like we're in a small transition period, but I think like, you know, the success of those 2 could really tell us where it's going to go for the future.
Interesting. I have one more question, if you'll allow it. If you were picking a director to make another Star Trek movie, completely fresh, can be about whatever with it, with whichever characters you like, but who do you think could helm it? Because it occurs to me that one of the challenges of this IP, and tell me if I'm completely off base here, is that there's not a single person. There's not like a person with the last name Roddenberry who's still in creative control of what happens, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like these other bits of IP like Disney, at least there's the appearance that they've been shepherded generation over generation by a single person. And yeah, I get it. It's controlled by Paramount. And I imagine there's somebody who's head of Star Trek development or something there. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't feel like someone who's been continuously shepherding the brand over the years.
Well, I think like the shows right now is Kurtzman, but then the movies are completely separate.
Yeah,
like,
we're talking movies, sorry.
I don't know. It's a really good question. I did like I liked Star Trek Beyond. I think that was like starting to take the movies in an interesting direction, but of course like that was the end of it. If we were to pick, that's a good question. Like pie in the sky, like what director would be like super pumped?
Tarantino like floated as like an idea for like potentially like
he said he wanted to do it.
That would have been fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know. That's my instinct is to be like, I don't know if I need Tarantino helming a Star Trek movie.
I think I like if it was a one-off maybe too. Like it could be pretty cool.
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have a go-to answer for this already?
No, I don't. But it is interesting to me how in this modern world of content, people are handling this kind of IP. And I tend to think that some of the more successful forays are ones where they're willing to mess around with the tone.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like Rogue One into Andor.
Yeah.
For the Star Wars universe or things like that. But you know, one of the challenges, right, is that it feels like everything you do is canon and it's scrutinized, and you can't just make a goofy little Star Trek indie film. Is maybe how they feel.
I would, and I know in some sense, and I feel like a lot like people would like that. You know,
yeah,
like a lot of people I think would love just like a not blockbustery, you know, huge effects, like kind of a low key vibe story. I will say, like to your point about like making something goofy, we talked about on the podcast actually. They did this like tribute to the animated series where they did these like short animated like episodes that were like Adult Swim style humor with the cast, and I was like, this feels like very short very short treks. Like it felt like that was them like really swinging at some like experimental weirdness. It was like that.
Did you see
like,
those?
I did not see those. No.
Okay.
Yeah, check that out. They were wild, and like kind of coming off the heels of like Lower Decks, with like just a different approach to what Star Trek can be. Like that stuff was really interesting. So yeah, I mean, I did appreciate like when they had all the series going, like they seemed to all kind of occupy like a different like almost genre space. Like that was kind of interesting. So I in terms of like a director to take on the movie side of it, like I don't know if I don't know what, the name that comes to mind, and I don't know if this is actually a good answer.
No, just say it.
But somebody who I have really admired as a director and watching what they've been doing, and somebody who also has a very anti-capitalist, anti-fascist approach is do you know who I'm going to say?
Just
Bong Joon-ho.
Oh,
I think that'd be a really interesting. He could make a really interesting.
I was kind of thinking that too. That's totally. Yeah,
Ooh.
I can see it.
He operates in like the satire space right now a lot of times, but I feel like him taking on like an earnest, optimistic thing, like he could really make it. I feel like he could make it biting still.
Love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. Actually,
that's what I say. Anyway,
pipe dream.
Yeah, pipe dream.
Thanks for those questions. I love that.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Anyway, that was our Trek check.
Computer status report. What the hell was that?
Thank you, Joe.
We are here then to talk about the episode of TNG, which is season 4. I believe it is episode. What is it?
It's 23.
Episode 23. The Host. And it basically tells the story of Dr. Crusher, who falls in love with an ambassador and kind of wrestles with her feelings when she learns that this guy is a Trill, right? Who is a parasite who exists inside of host bodies. We learn more about the Trill, of course, moving forward, but that's kind of what we get at this point. Let's just kind of dig into some thoughts. Rob, as a member of the Beverly Crushers, what did you think of this episode?
Listen, I show my love by a little bit of nitpicking. I do think it's a fun episode. I think it was a cool way to introduce a new alien species that becomes a big part of the Star Trek universe from that point on, or a reasonable thing. But I also think there's some funny stuff going on. Like, it's classic Star Trek. Just throw some ridges on the guy's face. He's still handsome, but he's just got a lump of clay on his forehead. That's enough. We're taking that. And the other thing that really struck me about it, we do make jokes about this in the band in a few different songs, is Riker is such a sex maniac that I cannot help but think he volunteers because he thinks there's a chance he's going to bed Crusher.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, well, technically he doesn't remember it, but it still counts. Like when he's in 10 forward talking to the boys in the locker room, he's like, yeah, you know.
That's an interesting perspective, because I feel like I don't know. We can get into it.
You're gonna get into it too.
Well, no, just because I was reading to you about like how some people, you know, like towards the end, like people's feelings about kind of the ending overall, but then like also kind of going back to the Riker thing and being like, he didn't really consent to like his body, but you're kind of saying like there was sort of the like maybe that was the intent, like there was like the implicit consent in like going.
He goes out of his way to have sex with everybody and everything, you know. Is my observation. Yeah.
One of the funniest things about Riker is I feel like he was the most chill in that like Naked Now or Naked Time episode when everyone else was sex crazed, because he was like, this is my norm. You know?
Right. I'm used to dealing with this.
Yeah, this is how I always am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nicole, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like it's overall a really powerful episode, and it's just very say this a lot about a lot of these like good episodes, I think, quintessential Star Trek and how it explores different themes through the lens of weird sci-fi concepts. And so I think that it succeeds well in that. It's interesting character exploration for Crusher. And like you said, Rob introduces the Trill, even though, you know, that eventually manifests slightly differently than how it's initially presented here as a species. But, you know, the Trill are one of the most fascinating species, I think, because of these questions of like what is a person? I don't know.
Sure.
Who are you? Your body, your consciousness, is it a combination? Like, in just how the Trill evolved throughout the franchise, especially in Deep Space Nine. Just so they're a really cool, inventive like species or race, and I mean, Love Crusher getting her, just getting her glow. That's what I'll say.
Definitely. It's a change of pace. I mean, it's a whirlwind romance though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. I'm signing on, and I guess it's hard to find love when you're on a spaceship exploring the galaxy, to be fair. So you got to kind of take what you can get, but I agree the concepts are interesting. Modern dating question. What date number do you have to tell someone you're a Trill? And then there might be a body switch coming up. That's something you reveal right away,
Well, that's posed in the episode, though. I'm sorry, I keep stepping over.
Well, it's like,
it's
cagey.
Thoughts,
he's cagey about. There's a part where there's a line that he says, "Well, you didn't tell me you're a single being. It's normal for you." And it's like, yes, but you were also super cagey about it. Like you're very clear that you're not trying to tell that you're like a symbiont entity.
The rule book doesn't say a donkey can't kick a field goal, man. It's like, I think
fair, you know. Yeah. Okay, Joe, what about your thoughts?
Okay, my general thoughts. I think it's generally a solid episode. We talk about love story episodes all the time on the podcast, but like the best are when they like infuse it with some sort of really weird sci-fi out there element, and this is like a cool way to do that. This is definitely a precursor to that DS9 episode Rejoined that we've talked about before.
We did do that.
The themes are quite similar.
Too long ago.
And I think in that
they're different episode, though.
They're different, but I think like
different.
The themes are evolved in that episode a little bit. I liked the steaminess when you were saying Dr. Crusher I thought you were gonna say get her freak on, because kind of did.
Did.
That was cool. I think it's Frank Lutz was the name of the actor who played ODAN, the host. He was pretty good. Fun to see the Enterprise Salon. It was a new piece in canon. Very random, like new little space.
Did it continue in canon? I feel like I don't remember.
I just love like that the Enterprise feels like a resort sometimes. Like the D, only the D, none of the other ones, but that one specifically. It's great. Love the practical effects in this one, like the Trill like slug symbiont that like it's really cool. They changed the design in Deep Space Nine. It looks different, but in this one it was based on a caterpillar with an octopus for a head. So I read a little bit from what the VFX people said, and they had an air bladder inside to give it the appearance that it was pulsating, and they painted like fluorescent paint so it could glow when like a black light was pointed at it. So I just feel like I love like practical effects stuff and like hearing those kinds of stories, like how they make that stuff. So thought that was really fun. Thought the humor was solid. Like when Data like clearly wasn't getting the hint in the turbo lift in the beginning, that was very funny.
So funny.
When ODAN was asking Picard for like advice about Beverly as a woman, and he's so uncomfortable. That was very funny. That was good. I also feel like on the flip side of that, like the scene where Picard was like, "Hey, Beverly, I'm your friend. Like, I'm here for you." Like when she's stressed, like that was just a nice touching moment between the two of them. And the scene where like Troy and Beverly were talking about like their first loves, that was like a good scene, like character scene. Lots of silliness, but there are definitely some good moments overall.
Which I feel like is Star Trek in a nutshell.
Apropos, very TNG.
Speaking of Star Trek in a nutshell, can I make one more observation, which is at the end of the episode, Crusher is sitting there in 10 forward with Troy, and she basically calls herself out for not being progressive enough.
She kind of does. Yeah.
I just thought, I'm always shocked watching it in 2025 how insanely progressive the show can be from the 90s.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Like, okay, so I guess let's get into it. So like with the ending, like it's interesting to watch in 2025 because, like now the considerations, if it was written today, would certainly be more about like, like gender fluidity, like, as like a trans allegory. It wasn't thought of necessarily as that at the time, but I think like some of the lines that she has about like, oh, perhaps we're not like, it's our limitation, our human limitation. I feel like it's written for a 1991 audience. Like it's talking at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a valid thing. Like you could say like, okay, maybe it's not how it would sound, or how like the utopia in the 24th century might talk, but like it's written for that audience at the time. I feel like it's, that kind of makes sense.
I do want to point out, because I was looking through kind of Memory Alpha and like on the internet, like kind of about the backstory to this episode. It wasn't originally written as like a Beverly centered episode with this like kind of romantic element. I think it was initially just like going to be like, okay, the idea of, this like kind of squirmy worm, like parasite being the actual consciousness, and sort of the mediation going on between the two. It's really the boring part of this episode, but it was originally kind of pitched like that, like, oh, like what if this being was like just using bodies as hosts, and like and I think it was like infused with like, well, what if we center it around a crusher, and she falls in love, and and then you kind of have the body switching thing, and so like that really elevates it, I think, to a real like Star Trek like experience, and why it's so memorable. Otherwise, I don't think it would be as memorable. And maybe the trio wouldn't have survived into Deep Space Nine. I don't know. It might have just been a one-off episode with a one-off crab alien, whatever. What did you say?
Slug.
So I think that's an interesting element to think about, that like going back to the idea about the kind of the ending and the body hopping and the gender swap, fluidity. That I definitely don't think that was it wasn't centered around the idea of this episode to begin with. It was just like, oh, like more like, what if basically the brain wasn't where we expect it to be, and it's
right,
just like
what part of us is us? I think that's the sci-fi concept. But I think adding this love element is an interesting thread for sure. And I mean, I feel like they play a little fast and loose with medical recovery in Star Trek, but Riker gets like a 17-pound slug dropped into his chest, and he's just kind of up and about right after that.
Yeah, they kind of just like give some lip service to like, oh, his body can't take it too much longer.
I completely forgot that 45% of this episode, that the Trill symbiont is inside Riker. We'd watched this probably several years ago for the first time, and then we were returning to it for a second time to rewatch for this recording, and I was like, wait, what? I kept looking at you, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then like
You're like, do they go through with this? Yeah.
And then they do, and it's like most of the episode is actually centered around her being like, this is weird, like my friend wants to bang me now, or that's what it feels like.
And then it's presumably another one of those things, like all the crazy stuff that happens to people in the Enterprise that never gets talked about again.
Oh my god! No.
Like when Riker goes back to being Riker, they're not discussing this. That's
insane. Okay, so what happened? Yeah, yeah. It's a fun, probably a really fun role for Frakes, Jonathan Frakes, to just be like, I get to be a completely different person.
I should have watched closer to see if he sat in a chair the same way, or if he changed that up too.
Oh, that would have been interesting, like a physical performance difference. I didn't even think to look for that. Yeah.
Well, like Gaze McFadden was really pregnant during this episode, according to production notes. So they actually had to do like a lot of work to hide her pregnant stomach.
Interesting. Is that just her wearing the flowing? Because she has that part of her costume is the flowing robe doctor thing.
I think that's when that shows up, is because she's pregnant. But then like most, like, I mean, all the shots are like, chest up.
Didn't they do the same with who was it in Voyager? Roxanne Dawson. They just gave her like a jacket.
Yeah, actually, like the same thing does happen.
Jacket.
Yep. Yeah.
Basically,
we did watch one of those episodes, I think, recently again, and like, it's very clear whenever.
I think in Star Trek, if a woman gets a jacket, it's probably because the actor might be pregnant.
Yeah.
That's what we learned.
So funny.
It is very funny. Yeah. I think that the interesting stuff about the Trill, I think we could talk about that a little bit too. So like, you mentioned that there is like, it was very like a 50-50, almost like this could have been just like a one-off alien that we never see again. Right. And I don't know how often like the TNG writers in that era, especially, like I know the original series was not really kind of thinking about lore and canon, but like it might have been at this point, but perhaps like they were also trying to fill like 26 episodes, or like probably not thinking like, oh, somebody's going to scrutinize this like 20 years later in a podcast, But like, it is interesting to know like how much of like Trill like culture and like Trill like the look and like the idea behind it like did shift when we start to see him in Deep Space Nine. Like pretty. It's also interesting because when Terry Farrell in Deep Space Nine, the Trill character, there's like production images of her like in this kind of makeup with the like the little forehead thing, and
Piece
they
of
actually
clay.
the piece of clay. They tried to do that at first, but like the studio insisted they didn't want her to have any prosthetics on her face, and
I
so like
wonder why.
I'm sure you could imagine why.
Mm.
So Michael Westmore, the like the makeup guy, had to like come up with different ideas, and he was like trying to play around with different things, and so then they came up with the spots. It was inspired by a specific TNG species called the corrosions, which I don't quite remember, but apparently they had spots. But there's also the idea in this one that the Trill can't use transporters
Yeah,
because of the two dual species, which is an interesting idea, but I don't remember Deep Space Nine ever
no,
bringing it. I don't think that is
it's never
addressed
brought up
at all.
again. No.
And like the fact that they're so cagey about the idea that they're like two entities, is a little bit more, I think, like glossed over in Deep Space Nine too, where it's like there's been Trills members of Starfleet. Like ideally, they have medical records. Like I don't know, they maybe there's some canon explanations of how they hit it better, or maybe just it's not widely known or something. But
Yeah, that's where I think looking at canon too much gives you can give you a headache. You know?
Exactly.
I think you hit the nail on the head. By the time they get to, I mean, even in Next Gen, but by the time they get to Deep Space Nine, they got a lot of episode A, B, and C plot lines to fill, and they're looking for they'll bring back whatever makes sense and expand upon it. That's just a natural inclination from writers.
Yeah. And it's fun, and like it's fun. I mean, like I know, like you were saying, like when you like an episode, it's fun to nitpick it. Like it's fun to like nitpick these goofy little things sometimes.
Sure.
But, and
We
it's all
didn't even
kind
get
of
to the hats that the dudes from the Two Moons are wearing.
Oh my gosh,
the style choices on this show always crack me up.
The alien outfit design, like what is going on? That was fun.
Speaking of which, one of the things that used to be around in the now seems ancient days of the internet 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whenever we were first thinking about this band, a blog I used to read was called Fashion It So, and it was dedicated to the outfits on Next Generation and breaking them down like they were runway models or something, and it was great.
That is amazing. There are, oh my gosh, yeah, especially like the late 80s aesthetics like are amazing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of TOS like especially like women's outfits that are
in TOS.
Oh my god,
original series.
I don't have adjectives to begin to describe, but they are.
But do you remember the Next Gen episode, the Justice one, where Wesley gets sentenced to death for falling in the plants?
Yes.
Those outfits,
Mm-hmm.
those are something. One more thing about the Trill. This one also implies that like the host is just like a complete blank slate.
Yes, I was going to get to that.
Thing, yeah.
It's not super. They don't discuss a lot of it, but like that is heavily implied that like it's basically just a vessel for the Trill symbiont, and there's not that kind of duality element that comes through later on when we get Jadzia.
Yeah, like the two combine into like a new unique entity in a sense, or being.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. This again, they were just like, yeah, this is how our species is. But like in actual Trill culture, though, not every Trill gets joined later on as they've evolved. So yeah, it was an interesting to go back after having watched like Deep Space Nine and even like Discovery and like all of the other canon and like the rest of the franchise and the series, and then come back to this episode where the Trill are first introduced, and I'm like I would have never remembered that this was how they were introduced to begin with. And I'm like, my instinct was to be like, that's wrong. Like it was like watching somebody trying to like use the Trill and like in something. And I was like, no, you're getting it wrong. But oh my God, this was the first time. They just evolved. So just fine.
Do you want to know how a Star Trek tie-in novelist reconciled the differences?
You looked it up, so please.
There is a novel called Forged in Fire. I haven't read it, by Andy Mangels and Michael A. Martin. addressed this issue, establishing that there was a Trill colony that was exposed to the similar augment virus that the Klingons were exposed to flatten their ridges.
Love that.
And this caused them to have a different manifestation in some way. So they're just, I mean, I guess you could just say any alien inconsistencies could just be augment virus.
Love it. Yeah, retconning is its own creative exercise.
It really is. Yeah, it takes a lot. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating.
The end there, though, because like, right, like we can. I mean, if we're gonna go there, right? Like, there. I mean, reading about this episode and people look back and there's kind of like, is Beverly homophobic basically? At the end, like there's kind of like a lot of reviews kind of sort of toy with that question, and this kind of comes back to like, well, what even like are we just our sort of personality or consciousness, or and like the physical aspect of like our bodies, and like because that's what Beverly's wrestling with right throughout the episode.
Sure.
Where at first it's like, okay, the symbiont goes into Riker's body, which is a body that she knows as somebody else, but then she kind of starts really seeing like ODAN come through, and and she's kind of just sort of like, hey, like love is love kind of thing, I guess. And then so I guess the question at the end there is it really because the new host is female, or is it like, wow, this is the third physical form you've had in 3 weeks. This is a bit much.
A lot of drama in this relationship.
Yeah.
Well, I interpret the Riker tryst as almost like breakup sex. There's a different set of rules there in my mind. I think calling her homophobic is quite a stretch, to be honest. I mean,
I agree.
It would have been an interesting area to explore emotionally over more episodes or more storylines. Like, what does that look like? Because this is a thing in the real world, right? Like, how does a partner reckon with that? And that's a lot. But I don't think we can just say we're just our emotional selves. We're also our physical selves. Like, that would be challenging at the very least, right? For anybody. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And I was telling you too, I mean, like the idea that like you pointed out, Rob, like there are for people for who this is a lot closer to reality. It's not just like a sci-fi concept. But also, I mean, the idea of like being like, well, why can't someone just sort of like be fluid in sexuality? Like that not everybody is necessarily fluid in sexuality either. So it's like, I mean, we've seen this all the time throughout history of people who are gay, and it's like, well, just be straight, just be with someone of the opposite sex. And it's like, well, that's we don't expect, or at least I feel like tolerant people don't expect that. So like the other way around of being like, oh well, yeah, like that was really like not good of Beverly to like have these feelings, where it's like, well, I mean, first of all, there is sort of this like any sort of different body, and then again kind of like just another aspect of the change to something where she's like, that's not something I've explored or had, like it's not really part of her her sexuality. So yeah, I agree with you.
There's there's a lot of mitigating factors too. I should point out, I actually know a couple who went through this exact scenario, and they are still together and they seem to be thriving. Awesome. And unfortunately, I don't know them well enough to really have gotten into the nitty gritty of the emotional journey that took. Maybe someday. Sure. But Beverly's known this person for like 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like max. It's not, they haven't been in a loving marriage for years or something. Like it's a lot happening fast. And number two, like what are the logistics of isn't this guy just a visitor on the Enterprise? Doesn't he have to go back to some other job somewhere? Is he going to leave the Enterprise? Like how are they even going to see each other again? It's not like there's a great option to continue anyway, right?
That's true. There was that in this scene with Picard. ODAN kind of asks like, oh, how attached is she to her? What does he say? Like, I don't know if he asks Picard like, oh, like,
I feel like he was implying like, would she be willing to like leave?
Yes.
Yeah. Like he was he was interested in entertaining the idea.
So maybe he's a chauvinist, he wants her barefoot and pregnant,
Yeah, he could very well could
I'm
be.
being
We-
flippant now. But
I know, but there's also like, so this is also like the benefit of hindsight and like later canon, like the rejoined episode we just talked about, like that establishes that like Trill hosts, it's like super taboo for like a new like a new Trill host to like ever get with like a previous host's like people, you know, so like that those relationships basically kind of end in some capacity. So like that this character like Odan is just kind of like, oh, I'm in the new host, that doesn't matter. Like I think there's a recognition in the Trill society too that there's some like taboo there,
Yes,
but that's
the
not
way
established.
yes, but the way it's played in this too is that the host body is a vessel. I feel like that was a lot
Exactly.
more
It's
emphasized.
yeah,
So
it's a
there's
totally
not that
different
like,
vibe.
oh, the host, you know, where it was like Jadzia died and now like it's Ezri and like there's aspects, there's like
Mhm.
Dax, but there's Ezri. And
It's
that's
different
also
people.
explored like in Worf and
Yeah, but yeah, to what you're saying though, like with
Dax's relationship.
the idea, like I think that Beverly is also wrestling with the same questions that we're asking, and I think she like gives like there's dialogue expressly saying it. So I think like she's recognizing her own shortcomings or like human failings. She mentions there is that moment. I think the one moment that somebody could point to like maybe feels like a little maybe homophobic is like when she has that like expressed disappointment when she sees the female host walk in. Like that was like I feel like they gave a shot to that, but like
Yeah.
when they had the dialogue later on, it was like the dialogue that Beverly was using was very much so centered on just like there's been a lot of changes and it's just too much for me and I can't keep up. It's not
Well,
about the gender at the time in the conversation. Really.
let's just also point out that the difference from a real world transgender version of this is that we're talking about a wholly different human being.
Absolutely,
Not
yeah.
someone who has transitioned, who has a lot of similar
Right.
features and familiarity to, you know, that's automatically something different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's true. Exactly. And yeah, it's
So it's not, the metaphor is not directly.
that's the trouble with allegory. I think like allegory storytelling is you're always going to have some sort of like element you could pick at it, you know. But yeah.
Well, and again, they drop this on Beverly and the audience like at the very end of the episode. It's like the last 3 minutes of the episode.
It's like a twist.
So like you were just saying,
right.
like, wow, this could be fleshed out and like we could explore this over so much screen time. And it's just like, well, this is the end of the episode, and like they, you know, we're done.
And I do see now that is one of the, I don't call it a failing, but it's one of the limitations of Next Gen is that they do not often delve into cross episode arcs. They seem, you know, and I know it was this not the style at the time. I get it. They were pioneering in other ways, but that is something that feels like there's a lot left unexplored for that reason.
Yeah, and that's true of a lot of the episodes. But like I think like as it stands still, like, and I think we're all in agreement, like there are a lot of really interesting ideas, especially for 1991.
Oh yeah.
Being explored here. And I feel like ultimately it's a cool episode overall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A fascinating one to dig into. I'm glad you brought it to us. I mean, it was there.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Trill's always
Trill
interesting.
stuff. So our kind of last like segment that we do with the romance, we give it a rating. We have a silly rating scale. I think I sent you the rating scale, but I'll go through it for the audience. Whenever we look at a romance in Star Trek, we have a 5-point scale. Starting at the bottom is a red alert, meaning a very toxic relationship. We have a yellow alert, which means it's above toxic, but still not very good. Fascinating, which is exactly as it sounds. It's fascinating. Fully functional, meaning like it's a very solid relationship. And resistance is futile, meaning it's too hot to handle. So the question then is, where does the ODAN Crusher relationship fall on our rating scale? Do you want to start us off, Nicole?
Sure. I mean, I think it's evident that resistance is futile.
Resistance is futile.
Okay.
You're surprised. Okay, so like I think for like 80% of it, right?
Yeah.
I think it has a leg in resistance is futile, but it also has like a toe dipped into fascinating, I think, at the end there, right? I mean, ultimately, like, you know, we kind of were just talking about just sort of the symbiont, the consciousness sort of hopping different bodies and constantly changing. First of all, that was fascinating. We've literally just been talking about it for the past 20 minutes. And then, you know, just it was fascinating to see Beverly kind of wrestle with like all of this from like the beginning, you know, to just even before he before ODAN switches into Riker's body, and then all the way through kind of to the end. So it's fascinating. But I mean, she tried to resist with Riker when he was in Riker's body, and like she couldn't resist. So I feel like that still applies. So I'm kind of like 80% resistance is futile, 20% we're going to start doing percentages. Fascinating.
Wow. All right. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty hot. It was pretty steamy for a while there.
It was.
Yeah. Very steamy. Rob, do you want to go or do you want to go last?
I'm calling it. I'll go. I'm calling it a yellow alert.
Yellow alert.
Yellow.
Okay.
Not awful, but I see lots of red flags here. Feels like a summer fling to me, which, as we know, burns quite hot. But we're literally talking about, I think she says 2 weeks or 2+ weeks.
I think so, yeah.
So there's really not a lot of indications that this was going to be sustained long term, even if dude had stayed in his body. He wants her to leave her job that she's presumably committed her entire life to. Like, he's already talking about pulling her away from her career. That's a red flag to me. Not to mention that he doesn't reveal the Trill thing, even though they're so in love over the course of 2 weeks. He's not kind of giving her a heads up that he's going to live on in another body, even though I get it. He thinks it's going to happen way far in the future, presumably. So to me, those are red flags for any relationship. That's my decision. That's my final answer.
Thank you for sharing that. No, it's great. I love to hear how people think about it. Also, when you were talking, it made me think, oh yeah, that he didn't reveal. Isn't there a quote that when she's talking to Deanna Beverly and she says, "I've never known somebody this well," or maybe it's how she feels. I don't know. I thought it was like, I feel like he knows me so well, or I know him so well. So that was just interesting, as you were saying, like they don't really know each other.
No.
Yeah, but you're on a ship, similar to an ocean liner of old. You're out there, you're not meeting a lot of new people. And I think that in that environment, you're going to be more predisposed to an intense romance.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily going to be lasting.
Oh yeah, we see it quite a lot, don't we? In Trek.
Lots of one-off romances. This podcast can go on for a while.
Yeah. All right, Joe.
I mean, I'm probably gonna have a boring answer. I just gave it a firm fascinating.
Fascinating.
Oh.
I mean, I was thinking like it's definitely like very far from a fully functional, because a fully functional is like probably like a Riker Troy where it lasts. But like, I see what you're saying about like how like it was hot, like resistance futile and steamy. I do see, like, I think I put it a little down because I did see like a few red flags.
Yeah, I mean,
but like all that you mentioned, Rob, like the red flags and stuff, and I think like the big thing for me that like kind of brought it down a little bit was his like that line I mentioned earlier where he's like, "Well, you didn't tell me you're a single being or whatever." I was like, "This is such a like a shitty like argument." I'm like, "Yes, but like you are actively hiding it." Like,
well, you never asked if I was married. It's
come on, man. It felt like that. So like
analogy.
So like there's that, and but I do think ultimately like the journey overall is very fascinating. I think it like as characters, especially for Beverly, like if we were to be able to examine this further in like other stories, like this was like probably a really big like moment of growth for her, like, or just like a moment of like development as a character, like where she could have like she probably learns a lot about who she is and what she's willing to like look for in a relationship and tolerate from a relationship. So like I think ultimately like it's a fascinating relationship and just character study on the whole. So I kind of swung that way, but on the lower end of fascinating, I think overall.
Okay. You're like fascinating / yellow alert.
I like that we kind of were all in not agreement, because oftentimes we come away and we're like all on the same page. Like
that was a good one.
That is fun. Anyway, that being said, thank you, Rob. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Do you have any like social media or like sites or places you want to plug for people to come find like your stuff or the band stuff?
Sure thing. You can go to thebeverlycrushers.com. All the links are there. You can buy a vinyl record. We have some cool original t-shirts. We're also on Instagram at The Beverly Crushers. And yeah, check it out. I think Star Trek fans will really love it. It's made with love. A lot of fun little Easter eggs in there. So check out the music, please.
highly recommended. And I didn't get a chance to ask about this, but the art, especially on like the new album, is really cool. Is that an artist you had commissioned with that? Or?
Yeah, commission. I found a guy on Fiverr. It's a freelance site, and he's based in Brazil. And he's a big Star Trek fan. So we ended up hitting it off and talking about the idea and the concept. And he did an amazing job. He actually designed some of our t-shirts as well. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out.
Amazing. So yeah, audience, definitely go check that out. Get some merch, get the vinyl if you're record people. And yeah.
Thank you again to Rob for joining us today and indulging in our conversations and questions and everything. Thank you to everyone listening today, wherever you are, to the episode. You can find us, the podcast, on at DS Love Pod on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. So give us a follow if you like what you hear. If you really like what you hear, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you listen. And until next time, love long and prosper.